People will denounce what happened in Charlottesville, the death, the person running through the crowd, and say, I'm not like him. But just because you're not like that person does not mean that you're not embracing the values of white nationalism and white supremacy. People in this country want to deal with race real quickly. We never want to probe it and deal with it. We want to just kind of say that's them. And one of the things I think we have to do is understand that. To denounce hate is not necessarily to denounce white supremacy. If statues come down, racism can still be up. There are a lot of those who think that racism is merely about personal interaction. So if they have a black friend or brown friend and they say, I'm not racist, in actuality, that is not what systemic racism is. What I'm concerned the most about this Trump administration is the way in which he openly used white rage, racism, and hatred.
These are animals.
Now, I have to say it is not new. He's not the first one to use it. It's as American as apple pie. Many of these statues that are now the focus of attention were placed between 1898 and 1922, which means they were not so much celebrating the Civil War, they were celebrating the return of codified white supremacy in the law. They were celebrating the return of an open white supremacist in the White House, Woodrow Wilson, who played Birth of a Nation, the Klansman, in the oath of office to all of his staff and directed them to end desegregation of the federal government. When those statues were commissioned and put up, they were done to say that white supremacy is back. When those statues were put up, every black member of the United States Congress had been removed. Segregation was legalized constitutionally. Every member of the Supreme Court voted on it except one. You have to understand that to understand why the white nationalists and white supremacists chose Charlottesville. By going there and saying, you're not going to touch this statue and we're going to protect it, they were saying, we can now once again celebrate that we have a sympathizer, and the president has shown he's a sympathizer with his inability to be clear. What precipitated the rise and the boldness of white nationalism and white supremacists in this particular moment was not merely Trump talking ugly, it was the policy direction, the mean-spiritedness and that lined up with the policy directives of white nationalism. That's what's really going on. It's not then just the statue, it's the statutes, it's the law, which means that people of conscience must, yes, challenge the statutes, but we cannot stop there. We have to challenge the way in which the policies of white supremacy and white nationalism is flowing through our state capitals and many policies in our United States Congress, but it doesn't sound like white supremacy. But the impact is that the laws have a disparate racial impact upon black people, brown people, and guess what? Hurt also more poor whites and working class whites. So our protests must be strategic, must be long-term. What we have to do now is, while we march to denounce hate, we're gonna have to march to the voting booths, and we're gonna have to march on Congress and state capitals. And we're gonna have to say to politicians, if you say that you denounce white supremacy in its most violent forms, that like what happened in Charlottesville, do you denounce the policies that precipitate that kind of violence and that embolden white nationalists? So we need to take the policy agenda of the white nationalist organization, where do they stand on healthcare, where do they stand on voting rights, where do they stand on equal protection under the law, where do they stand on Muslims, where do they stand on LGBT people. The death of that young girl traumatizes me in the nation. You cannot push back against that with just every now and then having a rally. You have to have a long-term movement that names the issues and then challenges them with a deep moral argument, not just a political argument. There is a moral movement rising in this country that is saying Dr. King is dead, Fandel Hamer is dead, Rabbi Heschel is dead, Dorothy Day is dead, Harriet Tubman is dead, Elizabeth Cady Stanton is dead, Frederick Douglass is dead, but we are their children, and it is time now for us to raise our moral dissent. It is time for us to believe in our moral dreams, and it is time for us to be the moral defibrillators that revive the heart of this country.